July 24th, 2006. This is Diehard Gamer Radio, episode 11.
You are listening to Diehard Gamer Radio, the source for off-mainstream video game news and topics. Now your hosts, Murdock, Brian, and John.
Welcome back to Diehard Gamer Radio. I am Murdock, and with me, as always, is Steve.
Gang.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't Steve.
Yeah,
Steve,
this is John, and Brian.
I want to be Steve for a day. I like cheese.
Can
I be Brian then?
I don't think you want to be my radio voice is kind of crappy.
Well, you know, you take the good with the bad.
Yeah,
So
but nobody wants to be Murdock.
Oh, what's the Gouda?
Everyone wants to be Murdock.
Murdock has to sit behind the laptop the whole time. And,
What's wrong with that?
You get all the radiation.
Plus, you get to see what all the tables are in your DM shield there.
He's not going to have kids, and he's happy about that.
Well, yeah. So, I got nothing.
In a nutshell, yeah.
So we're going to go straight into our news bits so we can get this ball rolling, so to speak.
Oh, yeah, because we want to get distracted by, stuff.
Yeah, I did want witty banter, and this is kind of what I wanted, but not quite.
Minus the wit?
Yes. So first news bit is the Wiimote information has been released, and all it is that Nintendo has given us a little bit more on the specifics of how the Wiimote works.
Whether it's compatible with petroleum jelly or what?
We've already gone downhill.
Falling,
Any credibility we had in this podcast,
rising,
gone. So
we have to be somewhat off topic because all the losers on G4 or whatever that stay on topic constantly have no credibility
because G4 is always on topic.
Well,
we're gonna interview these video game producers, and then we're gonna talk about shiny spoons.
I just hope that Wiimote is waterproof. Otherwise, going to need a lot of replacement when that KY gets in there.
The KY jam.
Yeah. The KY jelly is going to have a picture of Yoshi on it.
The KY marmalade.
And so people don't get shocked after the little flash battery and there gets...
Is it a flash battery or is it like a CR20?
It's like a 2032, I believe.
Okay,
that
so
can't
like
be right.
I don't think it's a lithium battery.
I mean, it looks like it had space for some AA's on the back there. It had a standard-sized battery compartment.
Well, it's also supposed to be rechargeable, from what I understand.
Oh.
So.
Wow.
Well, I'm sure...
For another official release.
They've found uses for the leftover lithium batteries from the RC cars from Radio Shack.
Yeah, or all the ones that people weren't going to put into their Dreamcast memory cards. So our next bit of news is Nintendo DS cases are cracking.
That's all we have to say about the Wiimote is you can, stick it in your pooper?
Is there anything more that we haven't already said about the Wiimote?
Well,
I think we've said that before already.
Well, the thing with the Wiimote is that between now and the time that the Wii actually comes out, it'll change 500 times. So...
Well, I don't know. We did find out some new information about the whole light bar thing, didn't we? Isn't it going to be 20 centimeters wide and it's going to be one unit you put on top of your television?
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's all we know.
Yeah.
And we still don't know if they fixed the problem with the, the
halogen lights.
The halogen lights.
Yeah, so when Daddy comes home and swings his headlights across the front of the house, and in the front windows, your game goes away. Daddy, you came home and I died.
It's like an 80s song.
So our next news bit is Nintendo DS case is cracking. And what apparently is going on is at the hinge of the Nintendo DS, right where the two screens merge.
It's actually where the top screen merges with the bottom.
Yeah, we're starting to see cracks. But according to Nintendo, they're seeing an 11% rate for this type of problem, from what I understand.
That's pretty high.
That's 10% of DS owners is a lot of DSs.
Yeah. And what Nintendo has done, and they haven't publicly announced it, but if anyone has any problems with any of their DS cases cracking, Nintendo all you have to do is ship it to Nintendo, and they will replace it.
in 6 months.
Are you sure they
No.
do it for
Is
free?
that
Because
as
I
long as
remember
it's
reading
under
that
warranty?
it
I didn't
costs
say for free.
$50 to have
No,
it
it's
done.
like $50, but
Yeah.
they are replacing them. So at
As
least
long as you don't open it or do anything else to it and it's still under warranty, then you ship it and pay $50, and then
well,
you can get it back.
it's going to be under warranty anyway since the DS hasn't been out that long.
Well, no. But they said if you do anything or open it yourself or anything that voids the warranty, you can't do it.
Isn't it
Yeah.
always on the left side? All the pictures I've seen, it's always been the,
I've
the
seen it on
smaller
both
connector
sides.
on
I've
the
seen it on
left
both
side.
also.
But I don't know what's causing it. If it's just thin plastic or
In fact, one guy that said he
Whatever.
went to one of the cons somewhere that was demoing them, he said that 7 out of 8 of them that he looked at were already cracked.
Wow.
Granted, those are just the demo ones, but still,
Well, they probably take a lot of abuse.
yeah.
But even so,
that shouldn't. Yeah, that's showing more than 11% to me, but I don't know.
Yeah. So next, Target pulls UMDs from all stores. Gee, what a surprise!
Yeah, this wasn't. In fact, I kept looking at them every time I go into Target to see if the prices had dropped, and one day they were just gone. And they said, "Yeah, they told us to pull them and box them." So
I wonder
until we
where
hear
they ship 'em.
otherwise, no, they didn't ship them. They've just got them in their stores, sitting in boxes, apparently.
Weird. They
Yeah,
gotta have
They're
some
not
plan for
shipped
it.
to Bosnia or something.
Bury it with the ET cartridges.
Yeah, where all media goes to die. Some landfill in Mexico.
Target just realized they're not selling, and if they're
Well, they're
taking
not
up
selling
space
any-
and they're
well,
not
the
selling,
UMD
well, then you
movies
put
aren't
something
selling at all.
else out there that does sell. So
But Sony says that they're planning on having, up to max at 200 games by the end of the year for the PSP available. Not 200 between now and Christmas, but 200 total. There's like 120 now, so they're saying that there's going to be about 80 games coming out for the PSP. So, well, I'll believe it when I see it.
Was that like 80 games worldwide or something?
Who knows? This is Sony we're talking about. So,
Well, I don't know. They always say stuff like that, and I mean, I start trying to count out, what those 120 games are, and that's got to be across all regions.
yeah.
yeah, I'd agree.
So our next news bit is that Sony pulls their racist PSP ads. In our last podcast, we spoke about the black-on-white racist PSP ads.
Boom.
And Sony,
I think we need to put the racist in quotes, by the way.
yeah,
Allegedly
Unquote racist.
yeah, allegedly racist ads, and they pulled them about a week and a half ago.
Because Americans complain, not because Europeans complain.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Not the people in Denmark complain.
Well, not only
really.
that, but I think Sony's actually milked it for all they could get publicity-wise, and
Well,
now
I-
it's reasonably certain that they can pull
I'm
it.
going to have to say that I think Sony made a big mistake with the ads because, we're in a worldwide market now and stuff like that. They just have to be more careful about that type of stuff.
I really don't think it's
It
going to hurt
had
them
been,
at all.
they'd
Well,
been
it's not
showing
going
them
to
for
hurt
a
them.
while. Well, it's going to cost them a little money, because I'm sure they pulled them before their advertising run was actually over.
Well, that may be the case.
Yeah, but you look at all the publicity they got over it. I
Yeah,
really
that's
don't
true.
think it's
Well,
going to
the
hurt them.
publicity they got here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the
even
world
though the
watches
white,
other markets.
even
and
though
they
the white
watch other
PSP
news.
isn't out here anyway. So,
Well, the white one.
They don't
isn't.
want the U.S. to get too white.
Not too late.
so next, Raiden 4 was announced.
Did you just say Rape Raiden 4?
No,
Rape
That's
Raiden.
totally
Raiden.
what I heard.
I was
Rape
going
Raider.
to mispronounce it like a
that like Custer's Last Man?
uncultured video game couth, but I decided to pronounce the name
I think
correctly.
that's the
Raiden?
most. I think that's the most split infinitive I've ever heard.
Quiet you.
I don't even know if it's a split infinitive anymore. It was split so evenly.
Quiet in the peanut gallery. Thank you very much.
So,
Mr.
Raiden
Peanut.
4 is another of the long line of shooters where your ship cannot get out of first gear for whatever reason.
I bet you have to shoot things.
Yes.
You are correct, sir.
Will there be many button pressings?
No, Raiden's usually pretty cut and dry. It's
Yeah.
usually just shoot
Shoot
and bomb.
bombs.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You
pretty
get auto
straightforward,
fire,
isn't it?
so you don't have to wear out your finger.
Yes.
Then, dodge some bullets, and we got a game.
Well, you do have to remember that in the Raiden series of games, your ship is very slow, and there are no speed-ups. So you have to kind of think ahead like 5 screens in advance.
Or memorize the game.
Nah.
Always a quality
Well,
experience.
pretty much every shoot 'em up out there. I mean, really.
So next, we have a deposit scheme introduced for the UK launch of the PS3. And basically what's going on is that normally, if you want to put money down on a new video game system, you would put down like £5 and you could reserve the system. But now what they're saying is that, okay, we don't want 5, we want 150 pounds, and then that way you have more money invested in it, and you're less likely to go turn around and put it on eBay.
Except for the fact that you're going to sell it for £1,000 on eBay.
Well,
and you're going to make, oh no, now I'm only making £850 instead of whatever. I mean,
well, you still make it back.
Yeah.
You just have to have a larger upfront investment. So hopefully it makes it a little bit harder for somebody to go around and reserve 20 consoles at 20 different stores.
just get a pool of people and they sell them.
Well, I'm sure companies will just send out their guys and give them the money and say, here, go get one here, you go get one here. There's always going to be a way around it, but I see what they're trying to do.
It takes a larger investment to do it now, so hopefully they're trying to make it a little bit harder. On the downside, I wouldn't want to put down 150 pounds if I wasn't guaranteed to get one.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's going to be able to guarantee that anybody's getting one at this point.
Yeah. I mean, with £5, if you didn't get one, not a big deal. You're only down £5. But 150, we're talking like close
they'll probably
to
do what they do over here at GameStop.
Well, seeing as that's like $250.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll probably do what they do at GameStop
like
and say, hey, why don't you just
2 to 1?
shift that over to
That's
another
like
game?
1.8 to 1.
Oh, is it now?
Yeah.
So next, and this one, not a big surprise, PSP functionality for the PS3 announced. So you'll be able to play your PS3 games with your PSP via some wireless type of connection.
You can do that PDQ if you fill it, and anytime you're down at the DMZ.
I still think the coolest PSP gimmick I've seen that they've demoed for the PS3 was the one where the PSP was working as a rearview mirror in a gaming in a driving sim.
Can you just Velcro that to the top of your TV then?
That would be cool.
What would be?
Or it needs a little suction cup that sticks on
it
up
sticks
there.
on your-
Yeah, you actually need to put it up on the screen somewhere so it actually looks like the rear view mirror.
And then
That's funny.
they'll add iToy functionality
that
so you can see
attachment.
yourself giving the finger to someone.
Oh, boy.
So next news bit is that there's an Xbox 360 bundle that's supposedly coming out around Christmas, and it's the Xbox 360, and it's going to be bundled with Project Gotham Racing 3.
And I think 3 months of Xbox Live Gold.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing in the UK, except they did it with a soccer game over there, and they actually gave you a soccer ball.
Was it FIFA?
I don't remember offhand, but it was this bright green 360 soccer ball, and you also did the whole thing where you got the 3 months of live. And
give you a sporting equipment for something that you're going to play inside.
Well,
Well,
you're looking at
in
it
the
from
rest
an
of the
American
world.
perspective,
So
though. You're not
there's
looking
like you walk outside and somebody hits you with a soccer ball. So
that brings up a good point, though. I mean, that's exactly the American perspective. I saw a cartoon last week on a political cartoon that summed it up in a nutshell, and it had literally the Earth and then this giant soccer ball outside the Earth, and they said you can tell you're an American if you're asked the question, what is the biggest ball outside of the planet Earth, and you say the sun. Because if you don't see a soccer ball, then you're not from somewhere else. You got to be American. Because we're just not into things like soccer, and we don't.
That's kind of a stretch for a joke, dude.
Well, yeah, but the point was, though, is that's our point of view.
There's not a
is we
lot
don't-
of political or cartoonists that are really good on a regular basis. I mean, they got to buy something and put it in the political cartoon spot, and it can't be the same as the
But the
competitors.
point was, though, we're always looking at stuff from our own perspective. We're not looking at it from another country's perspective.
Well, it's-
I think
Yeah,
we
because
lose
those
something.
damn racist ads.
Yeah. It's
Twist it into
undoubtedly
whatever you may, but the point is still the point. We don't see it from the UK, and
Will
soccer
someone
is,
please
is
think of the foreigners?
soccer is the world to them out there. It is their sun.
Americans
it is the
go
day.
home. Americans go home.
Wait, we are home.
Anyways, none of my points
no.
been totally washed
Well-
away by everybody else's jokes. I'll end
It's
there.
the point really being that it makes total sense for everybody in the rest of the world who's buying a 360 except Americans.
Yeah.
Will go, why do I want a soccer ball? And then everybody else in the world goes, it's not called soccer!
Yeah, it's called football.
And then they throw things at us.
Yes.
Like soccer balls.
No, they'll kick those.
They're throwing it inbounds at us.
We'll be
You're thinking
chased
more
by
rugby, I
hooligans.
think.
No, then they just pile on you and kill you.
Well, no, that's the point. Is
Those are my ribs. I need
they
those.
throw the ball at you and go, oh, he's got the ball, get him!
Zidane will headbutt at each and every one of us.
Yes.
All right. Our last news bit is Guitar Hero is a possibility on the Xbox 360. A popular franchise being ported over to a different system.
Yeah, well, and I'll believe it when I hear anything official other than some dude said.
Yeah.
I also would like to say, as I was saying to Murdock earlier, that I really, really hope they don't do that, because then I have to buy another system.
Have to buy
I
a
don't
whole
think it's
other
gonna
guitar, too.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be, I mean,
well, not
the only reason I would
necessarily.
actually...
Adapters allow you to go between systems, so it's possible that a PS2 guitar might work on the Xbox.
Well, the thing that would only really get me to buy it for another system would be if they had, like, downloads of new songs that you could get off of live.
They'd
that
all
would
be
really
like
be the motivation right there. It's just
they'd all
to
be
get
like
new
songs from like
more
all these
constant.
indie bands that suck.
Yes, they just track songs off of Left of Center on Sirius.
It sounds like they're already doing that for Luminous Live, too, so it sounds like Microsoft's behind the idea.
That makes me buy another system.
Yeah, well, and
It's inevitable, dude.
I think it's probably going to be 2 years before we say Guitar Hero on a next-gen system, because we're going to get Guitar Hero 2 out for the PS2, and I doubt we're going to see enough market penetration on any of the next-gen systems that they're going to want to move away from the PS2 for 2 years. And people are going to have to buy all new guitars again.
Have you noticed how long it's taking me to get a PS2?
Yeah, well,
Yes,
there's that.
Yeah, but it's like
And
John.
also on the 360, Microsoft's locking that down so that you have to be an officially licensed person to make a third-party controller for it, and they're charging a fair bit for the licensing fees, it looks like. So I bet it would be probably $20 or $30 more expensive on the 360 for the same game.
And you also got to look at the market perspective. It's probably more logical to put it on the PS2 because, like John was saying earlier, that's probably going to be the biggest selling system this Christmas anyways, because it's going to be between $100 and $120.
And it'll be available.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty of them out there, so
This may be
stick with something that's already
the real
guaranteed.
point there.
Plus, your fans are already still on that one system, so they're guaranteed to buy us. The next iteration of it.
And there are some killer apps coming out on the PS2 in
With a
Christmas,
Z.
so.
Yeah.
Guitar Hero 2, God of War 2, Final Fantasy 12.
Microsoft Office
Still some
2007.
Is that XII?
Yes.
Zai!
It's not a dice game. No.
All right. So we're going to
kind
go.
of is.
Yeah. So we're going to go into our game topics, and our first game topic is we're going to talk about Sony's ideas on used game restrictions. Now, Sony has had some strange ideas about
Everything.
everything. But what they want to do with used games is that, from my understanding, and someone correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Not yet.
Corrected.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Is that
Where's my whiteout?
is that every game will have like some sort of unique serial number of some kind, and when it's placed in your PlayStation 3, that serial number will like attach itself and like download to a database or something, so that only that copy of the game will work in that PlayStation 3. And if you try and sell it, it won't work in anyone else's PlayStation 3 but yours.
I wish this rumor would fucking die.
Yeah.
It keeps coming back about every 4 months, and it never has any more chance of becoming reality.
Well, this is Sony. They did make, the UMD, so anything.
It sounds like they're trying to do what they did with Phantasy Star Online on the Dreamcast, where once you played it in that Dreamcast, you couldn't put the game in any other Dreamcast.
Well, you couldn't play online on another Dreamcast.
No, I took my copy to a friend's house to play it in there, and it wouldn't let me do anything on there.
Well,
it said you're not in the right system.
Well, you couldn't use your same memory card. If you took it over there and created a new game on his, it would work fine.
It would okay.
Yeah.
Well, that might have been the problem. I might have my memory card in there because I believe I was trying to show them all the cool stuff, and suddenly it wouldn't accept
you had to
it.
actually bring your
people
you had
my
to bring your
cool stuff.
Dreamcast system to show them your
That's so ghetto.
yeah.
They're going to alienate themselves once again. Sony's so good at it.
Well, there's no chance that this is going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, it's retarded. If it does, then the PS3 will be an irrelevant platform, and it'll be like it never happened.
And they'll wish it never happened. So there.
So you don't think that Sony is not nuts enough not to do this, or?
I totally think that all of the game publishers would like to be able to do this, just like all of the book publishers want all the libraries to go out of business. But it's just not going to happen.
Well, that's true. So Yeah, Sony's talked about it for quite a while, and it keeps popping up, but we don't think it's going to be a reality. And if it is, just the implementation alone.
It's probably
just
going to
seems like
continue to rear its
Herculean.
ugly head, but it's never going to be fully birthed.
Well, not only that, they'd be shooting themselves in their own foot for this. It's like, oh, hey, I want to show my friend this game. Oh, wait, I can't play it in this PS3.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to start seeing this kind of stuff until we start seeing more digital distribution.
Yeah.
And, that's when we're going to get some of the nastier DRM stuff. And
not only that,
suck
but
harder.
you don't really own your game.
Well, you don't really own your games now.
Well.
No, your games own you.
You have a license to play the game.
Yeah.
Dude, I got
please
totally
play your
schooled by
game?
the
We could go into a whole hour-long discussion of the legality of selling somebody
And
something physical that
ramifications.
they don't actually own, but
Yeah,
we'll save that for a different show.
Yeah. And speaking about Sony, we're going to jump into our next game topic, which is why is there so much arrogance from Sony?
Man, all the Sony execs just
Bunch of racists.
seriously need to have their lips sewn shut.
That's probably true.
I think it's just
Kutaragi
10,
needs to be-
actually.
yeah.
I really do.
No, anytime a Sony VP talks to the press,
Yeah,
something dumb comes out.
I can't recall any time that a C-level from Sony has spoken in the last year where it's been like, oh, that's a really interesting thing, an insightful comment from a leader of the Sony business. No, it's been, huh? What the? Shut up.
Games might cost $100.
And then you see a picture the next day on either 4chan or Fark.com that says, seriously, what the fuck?
Yeah. Seriously.
No, you can't have a PS3 game, not yours.
SRSLY. Come on.
Yeah. So,
It's
I think
Japanese.
part of the error...
Dude, that's
well,
totally bogus.
We'll get to that point in just a minute, Steve. But I think part of the arrogance may have just be that they've been number one for just so long that now they figure they can do whatever the hell they want.
I don't think so. Right now, Sony strikes me as being a desperate company.
Yeah.
You think so?
Really, I think
Well, if
so.
they're that desperate, why are they trying to offend every single person in the universe?
They're desperately offensive.
well, being offensive is very good for your popularity.
And I think that's them flailing around. You know, they are worried about what's happening, so they're instead trying harder at what they've always done. And well, a lot of that is offensive kind of out there marketing that grabs people's attention, and
gets
they've
free
pushed it that
publicity.
little bit
And they
further.
don't care what type of attention it is?
I don't
Hey,
think
any
so.
publicity in the corporate world is good publicity. That's a fact. It doesn't matter how bad it is. It still gets your name, your image, your concept, whatever you've got out there for
Unless
sale.
you're Exxon.
I mean, they just seem to be like desperately trying anything right
Greasers
now.
need to die.
Well, yeah, and I mean, wouldn't you be kind of worried? I mean, if you had any sort of business sense at all, wouldn't you be worried by the fact that OMG, we're putting out a hugely expensive system?
Yeah.
And
For
what
the
the
first time,
360 by Christmas looks like it's probably going to have sold 10 million units, at least 8 million. That's a hell of a head start, and the Wii's going to be $200.
Yeah, we don't totally have to. We can just
I mean,
ignore Japan.
they got to be. I mean, they've got to be really looking out there and going, man, I wish we had something to sell right now.
It's like putting out a BMW 300 series and competing directly with Civics. It's just bad
Except
idea.
doing it after Christmas.
Except doing it like except competing with your $35,000 BMW 300 series that's going up against the 2-year-old, much cheaper and still holding up 1999.
Guaranteed to make it to 300,000 miles, and cost like 1/3 the price for tune-ups and any other thing going
But I mean,
wrong.
what is Sony thinking?
Should something go
this
wrong.
just doesn't seem very logical to me for them to just have them just spout out
Desperately
all
be
this
doing
bullshit.
anything to distract attention away from the fact that you can't actually buy a PS3 yet.
Well, that's true, but I don't
we exist.
yeah, but I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, if I was in charge of Sony, and
I
I'm sure
don't
could
think it's
probably do a better
intentional.
job.
I think it's just a sign of their corporate mentality right now, and that they are very reactive right now.
Playing defensive and just saying, oh, they've got this and they've got a head start, so we're going to go ahead and be assholes.
Or retroactively
They
claiming
really
that
have no
they're
artillery
innovating.
right now.
Or,
Anytime
yeah.
you see them countering something or making
Yeah,
some
'cause
claim
they-
out there, it's a bunch of crap about their system that everybody already knows or doesn't believe anyways.
Well, not only that, but Sony's had some pretty big blows to the PS3 before the systems even come out. I mean, there's the whole Blu-ray thing, which we're still not sure about.
Well,
There's the tilt sensor, if you can even call it that, in the DualShock controller. And then
I don't know that any of these things are blows. I think it's all paling beside that $600 price tag.
Well, yeah, but they really don't have anything that's unique to their system other than it's more of a graphical upgrade.
Oh, there's
than
one
the
thing
PS2.
unique.
It's
You gotta
really
drop
frickin'
$300 if
expensive.
you live in the UK.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd say that's pretty desperately unique.
It's slightly differentiated. I mean, it's aiming for the same place the 360 is, the current mainstream gaming market. But
Well,
$600.
Yeah.
That's what people hear and go,
So we
ooh.
figured that arrogance is just basically they can and
I think it's them being defensive, not that it's them being arrogant.
It just always comes off as arrogance because that's the way they've always been seen.
yeah.
They're
I just
they're
don't-
trying to bluster.
I mean, I just don't think it's a great idea to be defensive by claiming that your system's going to be more expensive than everyone else. I mean,
They're trying really hard to justify that price any way they can.
so next we want to talk, are video games getting easier? With the new video games and all these systems, are we finding that games are becoming easier, or are they still the same difficulty level as they were before? Or is it that we're
Are you
just getting
talking
better?
new systems, old systems?
Well,
I mean,
ever
there's
since-
always titles on a new system.
Well,
that are
ever
a little
since
bit
the
easier.
NES, are we seeing that the current trend of video games is that video games are progressively getting easier and easier to beat, and that the challenge is no longer there?
Well,
I think
I-
it depends on what type of game. I mean, shoot 'em ups have never been easy.
Well,
That's
yeah,
never.
that's just one genre.
That's like one. Yeah.
You're also talking about a really long-running trend here. When you go back to the NES and you had like 64K to make your game work, your game design philosophy was based around making it so hard you played the same sections 300 times, and that's how you got your 20 hours of gameplay. Now we can actually manage 20 hours of gameplay with different and unique things in there, and it doesn't all have to
Well,
be based
unless you're
upon
Tomb
making
Raider.
it repetitive.
Yeah. Well.
Well, also you got to take into account the fact that, you know, when the first time somebody played a platformer, it was really hard because nobody ever played a platformer before, and so there's lots of gameplay concepts that, you know, experienced gamers carry on from their previous gaming experiences, and
Yeah.
so the newer games seem easier because you've played kind of that game before.
Yeah, take a look at FPSs. That's becoming a terribly refined genre.
And look at kids; they're growing up faster. They're getting technology at earlier stages in life now. I mean, they're able to pick things up faster than they ever were before. So things are and possibly do seem like they're easier now than they were.
Well,
and-
we're also getting difficulty levels that are different than number of continues.
Yeah.
Or inserting a quarter.
Well, and
The
the other
timer's going to run out. I need to get to the token machine quick.
the other thing too is that I mean, a lot of, like, for FPSs, for example, I mean, the control systems will just get better. I mean, it gets easier to do what you want to. You thinking about, I want to do this with whatever I'm controlling on the screen, becomes more natural than, you know, I can't even think of a good example of it. Well, Akari Warriors, okay. I mean, yeah, you can rotate your guy, but I mean, how natural is doing this when you're playing, or doing this when you're playing?
Steve's
you know?
like grabbing
Twisting your
a
hand
twisting
around.
ball.
Yeah.
I am.
Well, and it's. I think that's a good point. Things have been simplified because they've learned from prior mistakes. They've learned what people like. It's easier to make something to what they know is better and easier.
I don't know if
They've got simpler
simplified.
controls.
I like familiar, but I mean, if you take a look at an old Atari controller and you compare it to an Xbox controller or a PS2 controller of today, they've definitely gotten more complicated.
Yeah.
Well,
But you look at something like the Wiimote, for instance. I mean, and it's got the same simple button setup, and even for people that can't grasp that, they're going to have Well, basically, but even for people that can't grasp that, they can go back to the old style remote, which they're going or controller, which they're going to have also.
Well,
so.
we're talking
I don't know
about.
that the Wii is simpler, and the Wii is also going on this whole thing. We're going to be totally different, so you get to learn everything.
Well, I
again.
don't see like 15 buttons on the Wiimote.
No,
unlike
instead
the
you can
Xbox
twist it
controller.
around in 3 different directions.
Yeah, I think in my mind, that's what I'm saying though. In my mind, that actually is simpler. If you can physically act out something.
Well, yeah,
sometimes
everyone knows
it's
how to
easier
swing
for
a
you to
sword
do that.
or at least pretend to fire a gun. If
Yeah,
they
but
have
it
a
also makes
remote,
more
but
people
not
want to
necessarily
play
how
with
to do
it.
it on a
Yeah.
joypad.
They don't know how to hold
I
3
keep seeing
buttons and make a-
developers talk about this, and I think it's total bullshit. Because all of the trailer stuff I see for it, they're like, all of a sudden you're magically doing this thing with the controller, and it's going to map to this action in the game world. I go, what the fuck, people? You're like talking about some sort of, random heuristic interface that you make some gesture, and the game knows all the way what you're doing all of a sudden. It's going to be a while before they figure out what the hell to do with that.
All
thing.
I can really think about the Wiimote is that it's got about a million other ways to get repetitive stress injuries.
Well, I think that Brian made a good point about, we've been playing video games for so long that all these games just seem easier, but it's only because we've been playing the same game for 20 years.
Well, it's also one of the reasons why we tend to get games in very well-defined genres. I mean, when it's a standard 3D action platformer, you sit down with that and you know what to do.
Yeah.
Actually, Steve made that comment. I just kind of ran with it.
Yeah, but I also think that...
Give me back my comment!
I think back,
Not
say,
yours.
20 years ago, I
can't have
might
your
want to make
comment,
the
not
argument
yours.
that with game design back then, I don't think balance was as great an issue with games as it is now. I think a lot of it was just...
Well, and
let's just try and
repetition was a
cram-
fundamental mechanic.
Well, repetition was just based on the fact of just limited memory capacity.
Yeah, and who here hasn't had Nintendo thumb? Come on. Raise your hand. Raise your thumb.
I
That's
I
what
had
I
a
thought.
Genesis.
I wish I could.
Well, I'm sure you got it on there too. Fighting games will do that crap. I don't know. We'll see inside of 3 months here. We'll
Yeah.
see just how hard it is to use it. I know I will.
or how long you can use it without getting carpal
Yeah.
shoulder.
Or if they do anything more interesting in the first year than point at things and press the trigger and the time splitters aiming scheme, which I already hate.
Yeah, or grapple hooks.
It'll be
with,
easier to light
Zelda.
monkeys on fire with it.
Well, if you're smart, you invite a bunch of friends over and you hand the controller off every
That
level,
would
and
make
then
a great
everybody.
party game.
And you can all light monkeys on fire.
do it, you'll love it.
So next we're going to talk about do games need stories anymore? I mean, basically we just pop in a game. We don't care about the story. It's like, okay, is this cool? Okay.
I care about the story.
I think you're
Well-
presuming a lot by assuming that all the video games have stories.
That too.
Yeah, what's the definition of a story, anyways? There's like a lot of bad stories out there. It's getting to the point where I don't think we want to hear a story because it's so crappy on most
I
of the
can tell you
games
a
or prior
story.
games.
It
It's
depends
just-
on
One
the
day
game,
there
though.
was some robots and they rose.
Dear Playboy, I never thought it would happen.
And then the robots fought each other.
Yeah.
And then they all got returned for used games because nobody liked them.
So, but I mean,
There's a rise and fall of the
do
robots.
these games, do we even need stories anymore?
It depends
Well,
on
what
what
the
game
hell
you're
kind
playing.
of question this is? It's like you're saying, do games even need jumping anymore?
No, that's the point, though. If you're looking at like an RPG, yeah, sure, you want to have a story.
Yeah,
you look
but
forward to
90%
the story.
of
It's
the games
pivotal.
that
or
a
pivotal.
lot of people play, they're just like, okay, I need to get past this cutscene. So
I
continue to play
I
the game.
personally
That
do
might
not
be the
give
way
it-
you play it.
Well, I don't
There's a
play it
lot
that
of
way.
games that I really like the cutscenes in, and even when they're action games, it's actually the story that pulls
I'm
me
playing
along.
Devil's Advocate.
If you're
Well,
looking at like a Neo Geo
you're
game,
playing
yeah,
Devil's
you watch the
Advocate for, like,
cutscenes
Walker.
because you know they're going to be funny as hell. But if you're playing most fighting games, you really don't need a story. It's a fighting game. You know what it is. You come to
but
kick ass. You
on
don't need
the
to
other
worry about
hand, though,
Except
even
a story can make a fighting game better. That's what
but
made
it's
Soul
not
Calibur
necessary.
for.
I don't
well, even
think.
the bad
Makes
ones
it better.
makes them memorable because how are you, gentlemen? Who remembers the gameplay from that? But everybody remembers the story, such as it is.
Oh, yeah, well. I think
It
was
might
good
not
in-
be fundamental to the game.
I think it
but
was
if it makes
key
it
to
better.
some games like Art of Fighting and King of Fighters
That's a
because
big
I'll
assumption
never
if you
forget
make
some of
it
those
better.
quotes,
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Well, with fighting games,
Just so long as you can skip the cutscenes, I'm happy. Because really, then I can choose whether or not I care.
Put it this way: put the stories in there because you want it to be part of the game, but give people the option to skip past them because after you've played the game 2 or 3 times, you really don't want to have to sit there and watch it all over again.
I do agree with you, but depends on the genre of the game. I mean, RPGs, you don't want to skip the story as there may be valuable clues that you need to.
A lot of times there is, yeah.
But, I mean, for the majority of the games out there, like first-person shooters, the people that play the Halo and Madden type stuff, I don't think they could care less about a story.
If you strip the story out of Halo, it would be half the game it is.
Yeah, but I mean,
well,
how many
you'd be wondering who
people
Master
who
Chief
are,
was the whole time.
Yeah, but how many people
that me?
who
Was it?
have played Halo, who are part of this Madden and Halo crowd we keep talking about, even know what the story is? All they care about is, hey, can I beat up my friend online?
They definitely, for things like that, there has been some buy into that story. I mean, Master Chief is an iconic character, and people are interested in it.
Yeah, but if
and
you
that's
go
why
out
we
to a
get
college campus and you ask how many jocks that play Halo 2, what do you think of Master Chief? Where did he come from? What do you know? I'll guarantee you they don't know shit about him.
I bet you would be surprised, actually.
I'd like to be surprised on that one, but I'm guessing not.
Also, we've got the books that are there. I mean, we have had spin-offs that are based around the story
but we have
of these games.
I don't think the comic
based
book's
off the
going to
story
break
of
record
Starship
sales.
Troopers, the movie. So,
Yeah,
Which, again, that's, that was a pretty mainstream movie. It's actually how it did
Mario
well.
Brothers comics and
sad
Nintendo Power
statement.
didn't really add too much to the story.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
except I wanted to buy the shampoo for.
But it's like you strip the story out of all these FPSs and you end up with Quake. I mean, it's an important part of the differentiation.
A bad thing. So games, you feel that storylines are intricate to a lot of games,
I think
John?
taking out the story would be just as silly as removing the sound effects from a game.
Really?
I mean, just ripping out any random component
all
of it for
games?
no
Are
good
you-
reason.
For the majority of
not
games?
for Quake.
Well, that's just the point, though.
I mean,
let's just say it cut and dry. It's for whatever genre. Certain genres, yes.
Yeah,
certain
but Quake,
genres.
Quake was a popular game and didn't have a storyline, and it didn't.
Well, it barely had a storyline when it was a movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Since then, we've had a number of games, notably Half-Life and Halo, that have pushed past what was the basic Quake mechanics, run around a crate and shoot something with a shotgun. And
So
now
you
we
still
demand
think
more.
So
Well,
you think
I
we
think that
always
really-
need motivation to play the game. Like we need to have a purpose.
I
for
think
it.
a story improves games.
It may improve it, but I mean, you go ask any 12.
I mean,
or 14
there's certainly
that
somewhere
played
you can
Half-Life 2.
where it's never
is
needed it.
Do games need stories? Is the question. Not does the story make it better?
Oh, it doesn't need it, but just removing one arbitrarily from a genre is a silly thing to do.
I think it really depends on the game. I think some
I
games
agree.
are.
I never hear like 15-year-olds that play Halo 2
I mean,
on
quite
their
frankly, when's the last
Xbox.
time I sat down to a shooter and actually cared what the plot was? I am the lone guy who is fighting
Yeah.
against the alien armada.
It's like I was saying though, I don't ever go into a game store and hear like 12 or 15-year-old kids talking about how great the story in Half-Life 2 is. They're like, dude, you can grab things with this gravity gun, you can throw it. It's the coolest thing ever.
You know, what's the
But
ironic thing?
anytime
about how
anybody
they got
talks
there.
about an RPG, they're fundamentally taling about
well,
the
yeah,
story.
RPG, it
Well,
revolves around the
most of
story.
the conversations I hear about RPGs are how cute the guys are.
Well,
have nothing to do with the story. at
This
all.
is a relatively recent development, however.
And also, I think when you have girls talking about how cute the guys are, part of the reason is because of the story, because they're being all angsty
because
and
they
weeping
look like
over their
girls.
lost lives,
Well, that's because
lost
they look like
loves.
Well, the other thing is, on that same note, the people I hear actually in real life talking about the gravity gun and stuff are 30-something IT guys. So I don't take that from that what you will, but that's who I hear talking about
but
the
you
gravity
still
gun.
don't hear them talking about the story. They're like,
I don't know any 15-year-olds anymore, dude. I don't know. But okay. Also, I mean, you phrase this as do games need stories anymore? And I would say the games that don't need stories are the same ones that have never had stories. I mean, Tetris is never going to need a plot line.
Oh yes, blocks from space are going to crush the Earth.
Well, yes, Meteos did add a story to Tetris, but you know.
and apparently to insertcredit.com, they
It-
formed a large
what
building in
about
Italy
Luminous?
recently.
Which doesn't have one. Yes.
It should.
What doesn't have a story?
Luminous.
Oh.
Yet another
It should
block
have a
dropping.
story.
However,
Written
you know,
by Michael Crichton.
the latest Busta moves, they've had a story.
Not a very good one.
Dinos and bubbles. Hey, man, what kind of story?
Yeah.
All right. So
I think they need more drug-induced stories,
So
like Milky Punch.
yeah. So games don't need stories, but for a lot of game genres, it helps if it has a story.
and for a very few, it actually.
Well, there are
revolves around
some
the
that do
story.
need stories, and there are some that suck without stories.
All right, let's call it.
And
good.
some have stories.
Yes.
All right.
And some games are nothing but stories.
I think we've totally failed to answer that with anything other than
Are we going to talk about
hand-waving.
Phantasmagoria again?
No.
No, we're not talking about this ever again.
Yeah,
End
'cause
of story. Nuts. Skip.
Phantasmagoria
Nuts.
is never
Stop.
the right answer. All right.
But the second one had like some nifty sex scenes.
Cut! We're over it! Story in! New topic!
There were boobies in that game, man.
Oh my god, Jesus, are we gonna sit here all fucking night?
If it involves boobies, we might.
Oh, Jesus. If we just brought this up in the beginning, we could have been over this already. There's boobies in this story. Yeah, it's
He's
great.
going to talk about the puzzle that took like 5 hours so I could see boobies.
Yeah.
It's like Mist.
I think that whole game took 5 hours.
Well,
Are
Time
you
for
talking
game
about
discussion.
yes. We're moving on to
Japanese
game
strip
discussion.
mahjong?
Okay. We're going to talk about cult games. And before we begin, I'm going to have a nice, nifty explanation of what a cult game is. And we actually have a link to the Wikipedia article on cult games. So what a cult game is think of it like cult television or a cult movie. We're talking about video games that have a definitive cult following. Now, when we talk about like cult movies, we usually think of stuff like Rocky Horror Picture Show, Blade Runner,
Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Plan 9 from Outer Space, those types of movies. When we talk about cult TV, we're talking like Mystery Science Theater 3000.
You have
shows
to
of
be
that
careful,
nature.
though. They get too popular, and they're not cult anymore.
Well, yeah. So we're going to talk about cult games, and there's actually a list of cult games on Wikipedia. But the one that seems to turn up a lot is Katamari Damacy.
Yeah.
Seems to be kind of a cult
I
type
would totally
game.
disagree
Definitely
with
a
that.
niche.
You
game.
think so?
I would totally disagree with that. The
Why?
popularity of Katamari Damacy is just too large for it to be a cult game.
Now,
It's also like a
level of
generally
popularity
good
doesn't
game.
necessarily mean it cannot be considered cult.
No, I'm pretty sure that's the line you step over
Now-
before it's
now
just a popular game.
Okay, Rocky Horror Picture Show, popular. A lot of people
Yeah,
go to
I wouldn't
midnight
call it a
shows
cult
for it.
anymore.
Yeah.
It was cult like a year after it was made, pretty much.
It was called
But I
back
mean,
when I went
if-
to it in high school
if
and
it's-
threw rice and playing cards.
If it's a standard thing that you're supposed to do in high school to be rebellious and cooling coffee, it can't be cult anymore. I mean, it just can't.
No, it's cult when you're like one of only 5 people at your school that go to the midnight showing and nobody even knows what it is.
Yeah, it's
or
got to
what
be underground and still have its street cred.
Yeah.
If somebody else has heard of it, it's not cult anymore.
So it's somewhat like indie music.
So we can,
It's not indie if you can buy a CD of it.
So Katamari Damacy, probably not the best example of a cult game.
It may have been initially when the first game itself came out,
'Cause
but I
people
mean
were
it
just
spawned
wondering,
a
like,
sequel. Now you've got a portable. I mean, it's
So
beyond
what
cult
would you
now.
consider a cult game? Like me, I would consider something like, say, Cultcept to be like a cult game.
Well, I don't know. Maybe here in Japan it certainly isn't. I mean,
are we talking about? I mean, is a cult game basically going to be like a different type of genre game or a genre-defined game, or is it going to be something that is more based on, say, storyline? Or
I think the
just
best thing I can say about it is if somebody else has heard of it, it's probably not a cult game.
So something like Dirt Jockey, you would
Well,
consider
that's-
a cult.
No, because there's not a following for it.
Yeah, so you need to have. There has to be a small following, but a devoted following. Kind
Yeah.
of like furries.
Or apples.
Yeah. Well, it used to be apples.
Yeah, now too many people like them.
Yeah. Not really a cult thing anymore.
Amiga.
Amiga. That's think of if it's the video game version of the Amiga, then you got a cult video game.
Yeah, so like Radigy, that's a cult game.
Well, I would consider
Hyper
most
Duel.
shooters to be cult games to begin with.
Yeah.
Because there's such a small following.
You gotta
Yeah.
go find
These
something
days,
rare
yeah.
like Hyper Duel or.
And like Radiant Silvergun is one of those you might be able to get away with because even though everybody's heard of it, well, everybody that's vaguely interested in shooters has been told about it, so few people had a Saturn and so few people imported it.
So what?
But there actually is an emulator right now that's running it fairly well.
So what?
It may
What
lose
titles
cult
would you
status.
consider?
Well, it
like
may be
cult
that they
games then?
designed the emulator so they could play that game.
Yeah.
That'd be an example of a cult game. I think the one I talk about most often, oh, well, I don't know, something that has a following that people like, though.
How much of a following does Milky Punch have?
Not much.
5+.
And there's only
5
like
plus
4
6.
people downloading the torrent the other day. So.
Word's getting out.
Yeah, but you could buy it on the street in Japan apparently, so maybe that's why.
Out of the bargain bin for $8.
Yeah,
Or some numbers of
some
yens.
number of yen.
I mean, we've said that okay,
about
shooters
2,000 yen.
just based on their nature are going to have a cult following to begin with.
That's
But,
a pretty good one to be cultish. I mean, I think a
well,
lot
how
of the
about, like old platform
Metal
type
Slug
games?
I would call pretty
Yeah.
cultish.
Metal
There's a
Slug is probably
dedicated
pretty-
following of
Although
Metal
if they
Slug
start
fans.
putting it out for Xbox 360 or PS3 or whatever, it may graduate.
I'd say a
from
lot of
cultish.
Neo Geo games in general are cultish.
Well,
just
Yeah,
because
well,
it's
now
such a
that,
rare
now that
system.
you mention it, a lot of 2D games seem to have a stronger cult following.
2D fighter games tend to
Fighting
definitely.
games, I don't think have a lot of cult.
Oh, I disagree.
Well,
Yeah.
some
Like
fighting
King
games
of
have
Fighters.
a cult following, but things like Street Fighter, I don't think.
Well,
I
no,
don't
Street
consider
Fighter
that
no.
having a cult.
No,
following.
But maybe like,
like-
Bushido Blade.
Well, yeah, we'd have to figure out how many people actually still play Bushido Blade.
I do. I got a friend that plays.
That's why you're on this podcast.
I think that's a
I think
sweet game.
it's implied that people other than us play it.
Yeah, I know one other. It's official cult status.
Well, like how many people actually beyond enthusiasts of 2D fighters play the old King of Fighter games? Not many.
It really is a niche area,
Yeah.
and that I think niche
okay,
makes
there,
it
there are
cult.
some fighting games that I would consider very cult status, like
Obviously not like Virtual Fighter.
no,
would
not
be
Virtual
about
Fighter,
it,
but I would consider stuff that's in the the Power Instinct Groove on Fight type trilogy or the Waku Waku 7 series of games, like Galaxy Fight.
Well, these days,
Match of
even I would
Melee.
consider like Samurai Showdown to be a cult game because I mean,
Mm,
how
I
often do you
don't
actually
think
see
that really
Samurai
is
Showdown
because I mean, you look
anymore?
at how many consoles that's come out on. A lot of people have had that game or they've seen that game. They know the characters somewhat. It's not as cultish as like King of Fighters is, or
Well,
some
not
of
as
the older.
cultish as, but I think you'd be surprised how narrow the audience was for Samurai Showdown.
See, I would
Yeah.
consider like a game like Contra to have kind of a cult following because it's popular, but it's not overly popular.
Man, everybody
Well-
who owned an NES played Contra.
Depends
that
on what
doesn't mean
Contra you're talking
anything
about.
now. Okay, Bionic Commando.
No,
Or
because
Blaster
everybody.
Master.
Well, no, because everybody
I-
bought those too. I mean, it was Blaster Master had like a full issue in Nintendo Power.
Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, it doesn't mean it now, but right now, yeah, it's a cult game. But back then, it probably wasn't.
yeah.
So that means things can change like that. Depends.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, and
like
I think
at-
an important part of a cult is that it still has a devoted following right now.
Yeah, like the Guardian
Well,
Legend.
yeah.
Steel Battalion.
Ikaruga.
Yeah, definitely
Well,
a
and
cult
yeah.
because nobody could afford it.
Well, and also, there was the online component, too, where you got a small, hardcore audience that really played it.
Yeah, Diehard. We are amongst them.
Any other games that we would consider type of cultish?
I really think the internet has had a big impact on this because now it is so much easier for people to find other people that like the same things they do. That if you've got a good game, it will become more widespread than it might otherwise be. I mean, a cult game before might have just been something that just didn't get good advertising. And now if there's a good game out there, people can find it.
Well, yeah. Without the internet, Milky Punch would never have been found.
Sometimes
Drill
things are
Milky Punch.
Things define a cult game too, like a really low print run, seeing it in Japan but not seeing
Well, and
I
it kind
think
of depends on
of
your
them
thing
over
too.
here.
I mean, like try and find, anywhere to find Puzzle Fighter in the U.S. without paying $80 plus.
I think it's
Well,
also
that, and it was
important.
also called Gem Fighter over here too. So
Yeah.
I think it's also important that a cult game have a lot of replayability because it's probably going to be something that doesn't do well enough to have a real series come out of it. Or
cult game. What's that game I got on the PlayStation? It's got the Nympho and the S&M characters. It was the first 4-player fighter.
Are you talking about Thrill Kill?
Yeah, cult game. There's definitely an
Well,
underground following of that. It was
well,
only
yeah,
the
see,
people
that's how
that
the game was
downloaded the
never
ISO.
released.
Was it ironically done by the Thrill Kill cult?
No. Done by a company that got bought out by EA and then closed down,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it's going to be that only certain genres are going to have more cult games than other genres. Like puzzle games, I would consider that a good majority of the games would probably have a cult following. Like Devil Dice, I would consider to have very cult following.
That's kind of I mean, we look at something like Lumens or Meteos. That's not necessarily cult because it was games that were released on a system that was new too, so that was pushed harder.
Well, and they were also excellent puzzle games, and everybody who bought the system played those games.
Yeah. Well, I think Devil Dice was an excellent game too, but not everybody could grab the concept and go with it.
It was pretty mind-bending for a puzzle game. There was more thought required than most, and I don't think it was as accessible as most puzzle games.
So you think accessibility has a factor on whether a game is cult or not?
No. But I'm saying I think that's why Devil Dice didn't become mainstream like Meteos and Lumines.
Yeah, some of the ideas were a little more harder to grasp, and the sequels got a little harder, different type blocks and colors.
So simplicity may have a key into, say...
Don't think so.
Don't think so?
I don't think you can really put a finger on it necessarily.
That's something that strongly appeals to a small group of people.
Yeah, there's too many variables. Whether it was released in a large run, whether it was released on a new system, or the system itself.
Probably not the best analogy, but we'll go with that.
Strongly appeals to a small group of people.
Cult status may be whatever it is that you play that nobody else plays in any neighborhood for that matter. I mean, that's a simpler definition maybe.
Okay. Well, now we're going to go into our game reviews. And we're going to start, as always, with Gamer Under a Rock. And Steve is going to talk about a Buffy the Vampire Slayer game.
Yeah, the first Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Cool and stuff. Yeah.
This ought to be good.
Yeah. And what's the name? Is it just Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
The first one's just Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Cool.
There is no subtitle or anything.
And what system did you play it on?
That would be the Xbox.
Okay.
I don't think it came out. Did it come out for anything else?
It may have come out on the PlayStation.
I don't think so.
All right, so I don't know if this actually went down on another system. There might have been
pretty sure it was just on the Xbox,
maybe, or something. No, it wasn't the GameCube. That's for sure.
Okay, so
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is basically Tomb Raider with Buffy skins on it. I mean, it really is. I mean, there's no guns except for crossbows.
Tomb Raider has no hand-to-hand combat.
This is true. So no guns, but hand-to-hand combat.
And I don't think Buffy has many puzzles.
There are many puzzles in the Buffy game.
Oh, okay.
It is basically, run around, pick up this, put it in this spot, press this lever, climb up this thing, get this item over here. Yeah. So the game has, beyond it being very Tomb Raider, right? It has all the voice actors from the original series, other than Sarah Michelle Gellar, of course. But it's actually
Is she too good for games?
She's too good. Well, she's too busy, as I've said before, actually trying to avoid being typecast by being in horror movies.
Ooh, good work.
Yeah, which is why she was in The Grudge. Okay.
Yeah, and The Grudge and, all those other movies.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, she's really deviating from her past. I think it's too late. And so, I mean, one of the things I really like that I always remember from the Penny Arcade review of this was that they really, really loved the combat system, because the combat system is very intuitive. One of the things I didn't really like about Tomb Raider was that I really had a hard time, my hands did not do what I wanted my character to do.
You had to be real precise in that game, too.
And I had no problem with controlling, in this game, just Buffy. And, if I wanted to take and I was surrounded by a couple guys, it was easy for me to switch off attacks between three guys. So I didn't have to do a lot of button mashing and kind of gyrating around.
So you're
and everything.
good at three-way.
Yeah, well, it'd be a four-way really.
Wow.
With Sarah Michelle Gellar in the middle.
Yeah, so there you are.
That'll sell many a guy.
You're gonna get raped
now.
Well, and the other reason I'm in a happy place is that Alison Hannigan actually did the voice for Willow in this game, unlike the sequel, which had somebody who sounds entirely unlike her.
Whoops.
Yeah. Not good at all. Very, very bad.
The sequel's going to get a bad review, I can feel.
So the nice thing about this game, it's got 3 skill levels, and basically that affects how good the vampires are at fighting and how much damage they do per punch and stuff like that. Lots of different weapons, guardian implements, bats, other such flamethrowery things.
Does it ever get tedious
or? Not that I remember really. I mean, I definitely had to go back and I had to play it a little while to remember what. It's definitely harder than I remember it being. So I apparently got good at it at some point, and it is fairly difficult to be able to do combat well. There's the normal sort of, there's people running around, you have to save, and they give you, little bits of things if you prevent them from being eaten by vampires.
Do you have to put them down if they are? Or do
no,
they just
they
die?
die. They die. They don't get turned, which would be an interesting thing. But
Didn't meet the vampire standards.
yeah, and you never really know why they turn people and why they don't. The only there's a couple things in this one. The continuity is kind of somewhere between season 2 and 3, if I remember right. So they're kind of like, well, a little bit of this. They reused some of the plot lines from Buffy. So they've got Spike and Drusilla's mad and is taken over by this overlord.
Well, nice to see some tie-ins from the series.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely the hand of Joss has been placed on this game and guided along. And as you go in and you find different secrets and you beat different levels, you get little interviews with cast people and character people and stuff like that, and little behind the scenes when they're doing their voice acting recording and stuff like that.
So obviously this is really angled towards the fans.
Oh, definitely. Otherwise, you're basically playing Tomb Raider, as we said,
That's
without
a big
guns
bonus,
and with.
Though. I mean, that's good when
Do they
you're
have,
such a fan of it, and you get a game that comes out that really appeals to you, and it also
Oh, yeah,
ties
definitely.
in things
I mean,
like interviews, and it just gives you more of the show, really.
Yeah.
Do they have interviews with the Sarah Michelle Gellar stand-in?
I don't remember if they do or not. I mean, they have literally. There's probably 14 interviews that you can unlock, plus stuff like here's how we did the game, and Joss Whedon's interview is one of the very first ones that you unlock. And so he talks about how he didn't want just to have this be a franchise game. He wanted to have it tie in something. But it's very kind of disconcerting because the whole time they've blue-screened in the background footage from the video game of Buffy killing things and fighting things. And you're like going, it's kind of distracting, guys.
So what would you rate it?
I would give this definitely a 4.25. I mean... there were some places that it could. One of I don't know if I'll end up reviewing the second one ever, but one of the definite best things about the second one is that they added a specific stake button. Because part of the problem is that you take in when you're fighting a run around, you've got a button for jump and fight and whatever, but there's and use or whatever. But in order to, if you're using a different weapon, say you're using if you're holding on to holy water or something. In order to, if somebody falls down or hits something, in order to stake them, you actually have to use the directional pad and inventory over to a stake, and then equip it, and then stakes it.
And then hit the use button.
Yep.
Sounds to me like the stake should have been the knife button in just about any other game, where it's
right,
you've always got it handy.
And
it's
in
not
Chaos
something you gotta
Bleeds, that's what
switch
it
to.
is.
Yeah.
You actually have a button where you switch over immediately to a stake.
Well, at least they learned their lesson and improved on it, at least.
The other thing about that's actually kind of nice is that the weapons that you use for it are all stakeable weapons. They tend to be very wooden in general, and so you can actually.
It sounds a lot like Soul Reaver, actually.
You can kill people straight off if you hit them just right. If you get through their defense, you hit them once or twice, instead of having to get them all the way down to to where they're laying on the ground and you stake them. You can just stake them in midair, stuff like that.
So what rating would you give this for somebody who doesn't like Buffy?
Probably a 3.5, 3.75. I mean, it's a very solid game, even if you don't like Buffy. So, I mean, yeah, probably. Plus, the little quips of the vampires as they die, that's pretty cool. And for one of the first levels, you're dressed as a cheerleader because you're at cheerleading practice. And so you kill somebody, and they say, I'm killed by a cheerleader. I'm so ashamed.
Yeah, that sounds like Joss. Okay, so next we have our standard game reviews. And I am going to talk about a game called Break 'Em All. And this is for the Nintendo DS. This game is pretty much a Arkanoid / Breakout clone. So what it is basically you have a bunch of blocks at the top of the screen, and you move your little paddle around. You can use either the left and right triggers or use your stylus to move it back and forth. And you try and break all the blocks with your ball. So pretty
So you
much
have to
like Arkanoid.
Drag the paddle with the stylus, or can you just tap where you want the paddle to go?
It's drag, so you just move it left and right. Yeah.
It sounds kind of annoying.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that in just a second. So the way this game works is that there's several modes. There's just a standard arcade-style mode where you go through 4 levels and then you fight a boss. And then there's like an endless mode where...
Is that like a brick boss, or what's the deal with that?
No, they're actually like biomechanical type bosses.
So you're fighting mecha.
Something.
Brick mecha.
Yeah, you have to hit them in the core.
Or like weird organic.
You have to break the
creatures.
matrix of leadership.
But what the other mode is that it's like an endless mode, but as you go through the game, you evolve. You start off as an amoeba, and as you go further down in the game, you'll like start evolving into something more than an amoeba. And as you get better, you become a higher life form.
This
So
is
you
an
go from
evil
spore
humanist.
Yeah.
Even humanist game, apparently.
Yes.
Go from spore to fish to village dweller to city to UFO.
Yeah.
Well,
To
no,
franchise.
they're all like living life formy type things. But
Are you squishier when you're amoeba?
probably. So I'm going to go into the controls first before I go into more into the detail of the game. So there's a couple ways you can actually control the paddle in the game. The first one is the stylus, and the stylus is not as intuitive as I would have liked. And the big problem is that the stylus obscures the paddle. And that seems to be the big problem, is that the stylus is on top of the paddle. So as you're moving the paddle around, you sometimes don't get an exact location of the paddle, and you're more prone to miss.
You better just pray that it's
So
where your
the-
stylus
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
The paddle's not, you as your organic paddle is not very large. I
Yeah.
take it.
And one of the things that they could have done to easily remedy this problem is just have like a little bar below where the paddle should be and use that as your movement, and then you could see where the paddle was.
Or enlarge the paddle itself. And make
Or
it
have
higher
a
than where your
virtual
stylus
Arkanoid knob that you turn with the stylus.
It already sounds like it's easier to use the L and R buttons, really.
Yeah. Now the L and R buttons, in the options menu, you can change the sensitivity of the L and R buttons, so you can make them slower, make them fast. And there's actually a button where you can change the speed on the fly if you need to get from one part of the screen to another. But the simple fact that you have to use buttons to control something that is kind of analog to begin with is kind of difficult. And getting the precise motions that you need in those types of games is very difficult to accomplish with the L&R triggers. Now, the game itself is, like I said, just standard Arkanoid clone. The interesting thing that they've done with the game was that they added a power-up system, but not like the one in Arkanoid where you get like capsules and you change into whatever. It's actually more of a Gradius-style power-up system. So as you break more and more bricks, your power-up meter will start to go up. So you'll start off with like slow down and then catch, and then you'll go into more power-ups. And you can select what type of power-ups you want before you start the game. So you'll have a choice between, say, a multiple where it'll split the ball into 5, but that's it. It'll only do it once, or it'll split it into 3, and they'll stay on the screen, but you only have 3 of them. So when you choose the types of power-ups in the game, as you break blocks, you'll see the power-up meter start to go up. And then all you have to do is there's areas on the side of the board where you can choose that power up. So for example, say you want to give your ball the power of like laser where it'll just go straight through blocks, or give it like a bomb effect where it'll blow up blocks around it.
Give your balls the power of bomb.
Yes. And
Bomber ball.
I'm amused by the laser balls.
Yes. And these power-ups add for a very interesting game, and they also added a combo system to it, so that the more blocks you break in one set, from when the ball leaves your paddle to when it returns, you get extra points, and you're graded. It's on a rank system, but the game itself is pretty. I mean, if you've played Arkanoid, you've pretty much played this game. Other than just the different type of power-up system they have, and the fact that you can evolve to a certain extent adds some kind of originality to the game. It's, like I said, if you've played Arkanoid, you've pretty much played this game. The only other thing I want to add about the game is that it seems to be, I guess, very uneven. Great concept, but the execution not there. Some really interesting things to it, but music and graphics, not up to par. So it's kind of like average as far as the game goes. I was expecting a lot more from it. I mean, it's still a solid game if you like those types of games, but I think there could have been a lot more to it.
I think it was more a great game idea back when they did it the first 2 times.
Yeah.
So if I was not an Arkanoid cultist, would there be any reason for me to actually go buy this game?
I mean, it's a nice diversion. It's a cheapo game. I mean, it started off at 19 new. So if you need, like some quick diversion for the Nintendo DS, it's worth picking up. But I give it a 3 out of 5.
What are DS games normally? Aren't they usually 30
they're
or
usually
are they
like
40?
39.
Okay.
29 to 39, depending on what
Depending
area
on if
they're
it's
hitting.
Squaresoft or not.
Well, some of the brain games are 19 to 29.
Yeah. So next,
I actually wonder whether or not the 2 stylus trick would work for this one. I recently saw this online for a video for Trauma Center, and apparently if you have 2 styluses and you use them on your DS, what happens is, so you put a stylus down on the screen, and you put another one down, and it doesn't register that you put the second one down until you lift the first one up, and it registers it as an instantaneous straight line move from the first point to the second point. So
That's the quickest way from point A to point B, I guess.
so it would be interesting to find out whether or not you could use that as like a sort of cheat for the paddle moving.
I can definitely try it out. I do have 2 stylized, so.
Yeah, it might be a fun thing to give it a try sometime and see
Okay.
what happens.
So next game review.
Word.
Brian, do you have a game review for us?
Yeah, it sounded good. Yeah, I recently got a copy of LOCO ROCO. It's not available in the States yet, but it was released in the UK along with the white PSP of yore. This game is basically, the story, since we're into stories here, goes that there was this happy little planet once upon a time that spun on its own, way past everything normal and anything we've known, and had this colony of little cute creatures called LOCO ROCOs, and along came these Moja troops one day that just happened to be black, and they peppered the planet and disturbed these LOCO ROCOs and dispersed them all over the place. And although you aren't the LOCO ROCO, you need to get the LOCO ROCOs all back together. And how do you do that? Well, you become the planet. So the whole point of the game is you use the L and R levers to tilt the world to move your LOCO ROCOs around and shake the world to cause them to jump and cause weather things like lightning to cause them to separate when they need to be able to get through smaller areas, or reform together to jump higher and move all as one. Interesting thing is you rescue these LOCO ROCOs by eating these berry plants, and they initially just multiply. They grow larger, and when you break them apart, there's more of them. So the whole point of the game is to collect 20 LOCO ROCOs per level, and also along the way try and find these little black guys called Muis, and they actually will give you parts at the end of your level that you add to your LOCO ROCO house, and you build these little houses and get more parts, and it's kind of a sub-mission in the game. But on top of that, there's also these little flying gnats, if you will, called piccaries, and you get those, and the more those you get, the more mini-games you open up, and there's apparently 3 mini-games in the game. You need like 1,000 of these to open up a mini, or 100 of these rather, to open up a mini game, and it tells you when you do this. But the mini games actually cost you money to play. But the neat thing about the mini games is you open up more parts and you get different colored LOCO ROCOs. So there's a point to go into the mini games, and you can play the mini games in multiplayer.
What colored LOCO ROCOs do you get?
I think there's a purple and, you start with a yellow. There's like a purple and an orange, I think. There's only a couple of different colors, but it's just adding a little more to the game than there already is.
Damn, can't make racist joke about purple.
You can try, but you'll fail.
A Grimace comic.
If you get 20 Loco Rocos on a level, an interesting thing happens. It becomes a time mode, and that means if you go back into that level and you do the same thing, you get all 20 Loco Rocos again, but you do it in less time than you initially did, you get an instant 1,000 Piccaries, so that adds to your mini games, and it makes it easier to play those. This is a good PSP game in the sense that it supports 2 players. You can do this wirelessly, obviously. It also has game sharing, so a second person doesn't necessarily have to have the game. And the neat thing is that's especially important because you can send things. In the game, you can actually take pictures. Anytime in the game, you can take a picture. Even when you're building your house, like you finish your Loco Roco house and you designed all these little things in there for the Loco Rocos to move in, you can take a picture of that too. And then you can also beam those pictures to somebody else and show them what you've done and let them try it out for themselves. Another surprising thing, which I hadn't read about, I didn't even know about, was there's actually an editor in there where you can create your own levels. And once again, you can copy these levels and send them over to somebody else. You really want to have at least a 256 meg card for this because it takes up quite a bit of memory. At least 80K, I believe, is a minimum requirement. If you have something bigger than like a 512 or a gig, you'll be more than comfortable. That's pretty much it. I mean, the game is just uber cute. I cannot tell you how adorable this game is. I took it to some friends' houses. They played the game. One of them even said this is the kind of game that he would buy a system for. It's just that fun. And it just is uber adorable. The music in the background sounds like it's been sung by a bunch of 5-year-olds that are just learning how to sing and they're full of life, and it just...
It's like listening to a Morning Musume CD.
Not quite there, but it's just great. The music changes from level to level. There's 8 levels I've noticed so far, all distinctly different, like an ice level, a jungle level. There's so many unique things you find. There's so many hidden areas you can get into, and you can't get enough of this game. You want to go back and play it again and again, and you want to go back and find all the secrets and get all the Loco Rocos and Mui Muis, and there's so much packed into this little game. I would definitely give it a 5 easily. I have so much fun at this, and everybody I've shown it to's enjoyed it. Even my mom, I just took it out of random and showed her, something unique. And although she said it seemed even a little complex for her, she definitely enjoyed watching it and just thought it was great color, great music. Overall, it's just a great game.
So there's nothing bad about this game.
I don't really think so. I mean, it's such a simple game, there isn't really anything that can be bad about it. And it's such a unique game. It falls into that area of like Katamari Damacy where it's such a niche area that nobody has really touched. It's hard to, compare it to something else to say, yeah, this is bad. It's the first of its kind in that sense.
I have a question. How's the control in it as far as using the LNR triggers to control what you need to do in the game?
I think it's really good. It takes a little bit of learning with the LNR because you got to know that you can jump. You initially jump, and when you get more Loco Rocos, you jump higher. But if you learn to tilt the world the direction you want to jump, you'll actually cause yourself to jump even higher. So you can get to secret areas, you can get farther. That's part of the point of the game, is it's teaching you how to control the world a little bit better. And that kind of comes with it. It doesn't have a tutorial necessarily. It has a kind of in-game tutorial where you go to do something, and if you don't do it right, it says, oh, you might want to try this. A little guy pops up, gives you a little warning about it. So it kind of teaches you as you go along instead of having to give you a whole tutorial run-through, and that's kind of a neat thing about it, too. I don't like having to go through tutorials, but it's generally a necessity in the game. So.
Okay. All right. Well, next we're going...
And also another nice thing about the game that makes it more straightforward for people who even aren't used to games is that all the puzzles are physics-based. So it's not like you've got this strange idea to figure out. It's that, there'll be this stretchy thing on there, and you'll jump on it, and you bounce higher when you land on it. I mean, these are very intuitive ideas.
Exactly.
All right. So next we have our classic game reviews, and John has a review for us, right?
Oh, Dirt Jockey.
A wild variation from last week.
Well, we're continuing the trend of construction equipment simulation games.
But not necessarily cult.
Well, I don't think enough people like it for it to be cult,
I don't think enough people understand how to run a machine.
I don't think enough people know it exists.
Yeah, that too. Well, and part of that is because both Dirt Jockey and Power Shovel, at least in the U.S., came out very late in the cycle. So... You know, they just showed up in the bargain bin for the PlayStation
it's only those
one day.
people that were digging in the $5 or under section.
Yeah, direct to bargain bin. Well, Dirt Jockey is a game that allows you to drive a variety of different types of power equipment. Not just a power shovel, but also a bulldozer and a dump truck and a crane, I believe.
I've always wanted to learn how to drive a drunk truck.
Drunk truck? Drunk truck,
I thought
maybe.
it said a drunk truck.
Well, that's what you get when you combine a drunk with a dump truck.
This motley crew comes complete with a drunk truck.
That sounds pretty entertaining. You have to like dump all the drunks in the back.
It's an easy explanation for why doesn't my control scheme do what I tell it to do? Because you're drunk.
See the mind through a psychiatric, or psychotic.
Basically, the way the game is structured is you have to get licensed for each of the vehicles, and then after getting licensed for them, you go through a mode where you use them in sequence to build a building. It works. And, you know, you do get some idea of how the differences between each of the vehicles, and you do different things with each of them. And they sort of step up in challenge so that you get more familiar with the controls.
Don't you get, like, chants of faith by your boss or get yelled out and demoted? You do bad?
Not so much as in Power Shovel, though. And that's really a big part of this. This doesn't have nearly so much wacky Japanese-ness to it. There's also a interesting multiplayer bit, which isn't in Power Shovel. But it really doesn't make up for the fact that the game just isn't as much fun. And it may sound silly, but the best part of Dirt Jockey is the Power Shovel bit, and, well, I'd rather be playing Power Shovel. So, hard to get too excited about this one, but we want to be complete about covering all of the construction-based heavy equipment games on the market.
Well, no one else is going to do it, so
I don't think anyone else ever has.
You won't hear this on G4.
And
it did have a wacky controller, didn't it?
No, Power Shovel
That was
was
Power
the one
Shovel.
that did.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to wonder how these two games ended up coming out at a similar time. I wonder if Dirt Jockey was like inspired as a home version after Power Shovel had come out, and they wanted to do something different with it.
But it was definitely an arcade game, and the other could have possibly been just console.
Yeah, and it doesn't have the same wackiness to it. I mean, there's no circus mini games. There's nothing like that. Just building a building. Yeah, no Komatsu porn either. So
yeah. Hot heavy metal in action.
yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
I can smell the exhaust now.
Although, I said also with the multiplayer, it also has a level building interface, so that you can lay out your own tracks that you have to get through in a certain time and do various actions. But again, you'd have to like the game enough to want to play with all of that stuff. So, well. Yeah.
Definitely worth the $5.
Well,
but
yeah.
No more.
So, you know, on the heavy equipment rating scale, this one is not as good as Power Shovel. Buy that one first.
Okay.
That's an interesting number.
Yes. So next we're going to go into our last classic game review, and I'm going to be talking about a very obscure Sega CD game called Time Gal.
There were popular Sega CD games.
Oh, yeah, Sonic was awesome.
But was it popular?
Was that like the bundle with it?
No, the bundle
No,
was
it was
like
Sewer Shark or something.
No, it was
the original Sega.
It was like Golden Axe, Return of Shinobi, and like some other game, Solfease, I believe. It's like 3 or 4 games on one.
I remember
CD.
the Shinobi box. Yeah.
I don't know if that was a pack-in, but
Sylphied.
yeah. But before I do this classic game review, I am once again going to have a nerd moment, which no one on this table will understand except for possibly Brian. So, excuse me for one moment while I prepare. Game creative staff, Wolf Team. That was my nerd moment. If you get it, you are a nerd.
I take it that was an intro soundbite there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Time Gal is a basically, it is a port of a Laserdisc style video game a la Dragon's Lair Space Ace.
Loosely
Ooh,
based on
here we
anime.
come, lack of interactivity.
Well, there's plenty of interactivity.
Plenty of interactivity. It's just very, shall we say, well-defined.
So basically, the way the game works, and it's drawn, and the whole thing is anime style. What it is that you play the part of Time Gal, green-haired, big-breasted, wearing next to nothing type of character.
Ooh,
all the
Chinese
rage.
tentacle porn,
So
here we come.
It's all the rage in space, apparently.
Was the character design done by Joichi Manabe?
No.
Oh.
But typical anime girl, and she is apparently part of this special organization, and she goes through time to capture these criminals or whatever. There's not really much of a storyline. She just goes through time, and like Dragon's Lair, you end up in some sort of strange situation, and you have to, press left, press up,
Once
press the
again,
button,
proof
whatever.
that you don't need a story if you have big boobs.
Yes. So the way the game works is that
Didn't help Swordfish.
Yeah. So the way the game works, and it's very cut and dry, is that you'll start off with 3 lives, and you'll start off in a random time period, and you'll be given a situation, and you have to move away at certain times, like Dragon's Lair. And once you clear the time period, you go through each time period until you reach the final time period where you fight like the evil final bad guy and clear the game. The game itself has different levels of difficulty. So if you put it on easy, you'll see little circles at the north, east, south, and west portions of the screen, and they'll light up telling you which direction you need to press, or they'll all 4 light up if you need to press like your sword or your gun or whatever. But the game has aged very, very poorly, and part of the reason for this is they took normal animation that was, I would say OVA quality, original video animation quality, and
What year was
compressed it to Sega CD graphics.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is craptacular.
Yeah, so we're talking about like 24, maybe 24, 30 colors on the screen at once, maybe.
Well, FMV on the Sega CD was pretty bad, wasn't it? Just like generally
Yes.
speaking.
Yeah.
Now-
You only had to play Sewer Shark to realize that.
Now it was a little better
Not
with
Nitro.
Time Gal because you are dealing with animated footage, so it's not, you're not having to deal with a bunch of like weird textures or
Weird
anything.
shading or anything like
Yeah.
What year was this done, by the way?
Uh,
I mean, what year was the original one done?
well, the original Laserdisc game I'm thinking was probably in the mid. It was probably the late 80s.
I think it was the late 80s, yeah.
Late
It
80s.
was
I'm
like
thinking like
88,
88 or 89.
Mm.
So the Laserdisc game came out in Japan, only it was actually released by Taito. And they came out with the home port came out on the Sega CD, where they digitized all the footage from the Laserdisc and came out with something that,
Look like poop.
yeah.
Was this published
it's
by
kinda,
Sega?
Looked like a first-generation CD multimedia game.
Yes.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes.
They succeeded.
And slightly better than, say, CNC Music Factory.
Ooh.
Oh, I'm dating myself
That's
there.
that's an obscure reference right there.
Slightly better than VCD quality.
Yeah. But in the end, I'm going to end up having to give it a 2 out of 5, as basically, if you've played Dragon's Lair, you've played this game. It's a little bit, if you like the anime style, it's kind of appealing, but it's, kind of a hard game to find. And not only that, but hasn't aged well. And on top of that, if you play the game, and if you just pause and press the C button, you skip automatically to the next scene, and the computer will recognize that you've cleared the scene. So you can basically just pause, press C, go through the whole game, and beat the game.
Well, I also
designed.
object to calling Dragon's Lair a game, really. I mean, how long does this
Well,
whole thing take to play through, and would you ever want to play it again after
Well,
you did that?
You'd have to say you're out of time.
Assuming it's a typical Laserdisc style game, and most LD games at that time was about 25 to 30 minutes of actual animation. So, if you were good, it would probably take you around 30 minutes to go through the whole game.
And would you ever want to do that twice?
I mean, it's entertaining to watch. I mean, it's like watching.
Right up until you hit the C button.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I screwed up, I'm gonna die. I mean, some of it's funny with the death sequences. I mean, it's kind of like the reason like why people watch Dragon Slayer. They didn't want to see anyone beat Dragon Slayer. They just wanted to see
people
dirt
die.
Impaled or
Definitely one of the best, most attractive things about Dragon Slayer.
Yeah, they just wanted to see him fall down the 1 billionth bottomless pit, or drown or whatever.
Get toasted by the dragon.
Yeah, which you got to see very often.
Yeah,
it's always much fun.
But the control in this game was a lot better than Dragon Slayer, which is not saying much.
Oh, so actually
when you press right, you
saying.
do go right.
Yeah.
Yay, something works.
But I thought I would break out like a real obscure title just to throw everyone off.
You have succeeded.
Other than CNC Music Factory.
Well, I could have done Revenge of the Ninja, which is another obscure game.
C64 game.
Why not start with Legend of Cage?
Legend of Kage.
See, that's that obscure. Everybody else remembers it as Legend of Cage.
Yeah, we can talk about Renegade at a later time.
Or not.
That was such a turdy game.
So that's it for this podcast. A show note will be changing around a little bit of the format in future shows, so listen for it later on. So anything else we
don't.
Yeah, or don't.
Are we going to turn it upside down?
Yes.
Start with the game reviews first, get all the dessert out of the way.
Yeah.
Get dessert out, because the game reviews are the dessert of the show.
Well, they do come last, so I'm just going with the flow.
They're the Alka-Seltzer of the show.
The Pepto-Bismol.
They're the part of the show that gives you heartburn.
So is there anything else we want to add before we close this up?
Well,
even though I don't know why I asked.
We didn't talk about baby killing this time.
Well, maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Our hate for soccer. Well, some of us apparently.
We might need more offensive in here.
Game over, man. Game over.
All right, so I'm going to do the closing bit before we totally go to hell. You've been listening to Diehard Gamer Radio. As always, you can listen to us at diehardgamerradio.com. You can also listen to us at allpodcast.com and also at podcastalley.com. We are also going to be adding iTunes feed in the near future, so watch out for that. Anyway, from all of us here in Denver, you have once again been listening to four guys who know a lot about games and not much else.